Right, here we are, guys. First ever episode of Pit Yakka Craic, first official episode. So this is the origin story of Pit Yakka Craic. You know, how are we here? How have we ended up doing this? So you're here today, Sonny Brightwell, another Sonny Brightwell, and you're our dad.
Yeah.
You're the father of Stuart and I, and we thought we'd talk to you about growing up in a colliery, growing up Pit Yakka, and what that was like, and that really sets the scene about the mentality around Stuart and I and how we grew up. So if that's all right with you guys, also here today, obviously, my co-host, Stuart Brightwell. Hopefully this is going to be something we continue doing and really
Definitely.
give this a good shot and make it something really, really interesting for people to listen to. So nice to have you here, Sonny.
Thank you. Thank you very much, son.
Good to see you. Good to see you.
And I enjoyed my cup of tea, by the way.
Yeah. Well, you're more than welcome to any cup of tea anytime. So let's go right back to the beginning then, Dad, and talk about growing up in a pit, in a colliery.
Well, as you know, I grew up in Easington Colliery. Father was a miner. 3 older brothers were miners. And I would have gone to the pit, but I failed, believe it or not, 3 medicals, which we'll not go into, but I failed 3 medicals and I knew it wasn't to be. And the other thing was, I passed for 2 interviews to be an apprentice fitter. And I know in heart of hearts, I would never have made a fitter.
Right.
Never. So what was to be was to be. And I got on with life and I made a living without going to the pit. But I was still very much associated with the colliery.
Yeah.
And all my friends and family and you know, you name it, going at the, you know, through school and everything. But there were tough times, but you didn't realise they were tough at the time. It's only now you look back and you think, God, how did we do that?
Yeah. It's an interesting concept, that, isn't it? I was actually talking to a friend of mine this morning about this, that when you look back at the way you grew up, which was completely normal at the time, kids aren't growing up like that now. We were talking about the fact that once you turned 16 in Easington, you were considered sort of a man, and you were meant to be out on the drink. You know, you weren't. You know, Travis, my son, is 16, and he plays computer games, and he goes over his friends and plays computer games. He's not interested in alcohol. He doesn't want to knock about the streets. If he's not playing computer games with his friends, he's either basketball training or he's in his room. You know, it's completely different to when we grew up. So, and that was us. So, I mean, what was it like for you growing up, Dad? With, you know,
growing up, I mean, in terms of family life, it was great. You know, no qualms with that. We had a lovely time, lovely family and everything. Didn't have very much like everybody else, and everybody was equal. And that's why, looking back, my personal opinion is that's why there was no crime in terms of burglaries or vandalism, because most people were on equilibrium. You know, I'm not going to say we had nothing, but we had very little. So, and everyone was the same. So from that respect, you know, there was no fear in terms of you'd get your house broken into or you'd get mugged in the street. So it was a wonderful time. Growing up, I mean, you know, I went to secondary school and everything, and football was always my interest.
Yeah.
And we'd go up to the local welfare park and we'd play football till it was dark, and you were shouting at each other, you know, and you couldn't see each other.
Yeah.
And then we'd go home, and it's a fact. I can't remember many times about sitting in the house as a kid doing what I was doing, because I was always out.
But even when we grew up, Stu, there was nothing to stay in the house for, was there?
Nothing at all.
You know,
that's right.
We grew up in a time before the internet, really, and people, you know, think that's been around forever, but it isn't that long ago we were growing up, really. I know I'm 50 now, and you're a few years behind, but we still grew up in a time when if you didn't go out and knock about, what were you going to do sitting in your room? There was nothing there to do.
It wasn't, no. And so you can imagine what it was like, you know, a few years before that as well. I mean, you know, outside toilets, you know, and everyone had an outside toilet before they made all the alterations to the colliery houses. And I don't know whether kids today could contemplate using an outside toilet and using newspaper as toilet tissue.
Yeah.
You know, so it was the norm. So looking back, it wasn't hard. It was the norm, you know.
Auntie Carol and Uncle John had one, didn't they? They had an outside toilet. I remember going there many times, you know, if we were knocking about the street, and rather than going to somebody's house, it was like, John, I'm just going to nip in and use your mum's toilet.
Yeah.
Mad.
Yeah.
But I mean, I remember, you know, your friend might have lived 3/4 of a mile away, and you didn't go to the house. You went to the house to see if he was coming out. So he'd walk that distance and you would shout, Johnny. And then you'd get a voice of the mum shouting back, "He's not coming out." So that was it. You spent all that time walking to the house.
Yeah.
And so you turned back and that was it. But I mean, the ice cream shops were great as well. You know, I'm going back to 14, 15, 16. You know, the ice cream shops were great. The jukebox, the cubicles, you know, and you'd be with the girls and was denim jacket on with me initials on the back.
See, I didn't even know that was a thing in where we lived, you know, where you grew up. I thought that was more of an American sort of...
No, well, there was two in Easington. If people's watching this will relate to that. It was Equis, the Italian, and there was Miller's further up. So Equis was on Seaside Lane, further down, opposite the church, I would say. And then Miller's was further up, near the Colliery Club. And everyone went to either or. But you were either an Equis guy or a Miller's guy. You didn't frequent both.
Right.
You were a Miller's or an Equis. And it was great. We'd have a hot chocolate and put the jukebox on, White as Shade of Pale. That's going back some time. And that's a classic, isn't it?
Yeah,
White
yeah,
as Shade of
sure,
Pale.
yeah.
That was my favourite at the time. And I didn't even realise what it was about.
What is it about?
Well, it's about drugs, apparently.
Right, okay.
We skipped the light fandango and stuff, you know.
Yeah.
But I didn't realise that at the time. I was probably 14 or something, and I didn't, you know, it was just a good song. But yeah, so growing up in Easington, yeah, it was the norm, and I had a wonderful upbringing. Definitely.
Yeah. What was your mum and your dad like?
Well, my mum was the boss. She was only 5 foot, but when she rolled her sleeves up, it was get out of the way time.
Yeah.
She was only a dot, but by God, she was wicked tempered. When she had to be, I mean. But my dad, you remember your granddad, don't you?
A little, yeah, yeah.
I think I was only 2, wasn't I? So it was hard for me, yeah.
But he was such a, and I'm coming to a story now, but he was such a mild-mannered man. He worked at the pit. He suffered from arthritis of the spine but he worked at the pit. And every night when he was doing 10 o'clock shift in his 80 years, he was a loco driver, and I used to have to rub his back with Fiery Jack just to get him to get to work every night. So that's how hard it was.
Yeah.
But I remember when you were very small, and you were having those convulsions, and your granddad got very upset, and he wanted to ring me to see how you were, but he had to go down to the telephone box on the corner because not many people had a phone in then. So he had to go down to we must have had a phone in because he rang us, but he went to the local telephone box to ring and sort of see how you were. Now, you know, can you imagine that today with all these mobiles and
yeah, I know it's a completely different world, isn't it?
FaceTime and
yeah,
it's a completely different world. But like I said earlier, you know, I had no complaints with growing up because we had what we had at the time. Nobody was above us. Everyone was, as I said earlier, a bit on a equilibrium. Everybody was equal. And nobody got jealous of one another, and you know, went out and nobody had anything. They used to use the dustbin lid for a wicket. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And a tennis ball for the, you know. And one story I always relate to, and the poor guy's passed away now, but Frankie Wood, they called him. He was a big guy, lived at the top of our street. And it was a Sunday and we were playing cricket, and he came down into the street and he'd had a few pints. So he said, "Let me have a bat." Right? And somebody bowled to him and he hit the ball. And it went through somebody's window. The only house in the street who was a complainant, if you like. And it went, Mrs. Fraser, I'll never forget it. And it went through her bedroom window.
Right.
And Frankie scarpered and so did me.
Yeah. So, yeah, okay, your mum and dad. And I remember Nana, you know, Nana died after Granddad, and she was a wonderful, wonderful woman. And a lot calmer with her grandkids, I think, than when she was bringing you guys. We never saw that side.
She had something to put up with, didn't she? I mean, 4 lads. And I'm not saying we brought trouble at the door, but, you know, we were naughty at times, yeah. Aye. Yeah. But no, she was fine. She was a lovely woman. And I never ever knew a time, even when I was 17, 18, 19, going to the club and coming back in. I never remember a time when I went in the house that my mum wasn't there. If it was 6 o'clock in the morning, she was there. If it was 11 o'clock at night, she was there. And I often wondered whenever she slept, you know.
It's funny, even though it was a lot of years later and she'd moved up to Easington Village at that point, and I know she was a little older then, but actually not, you know, looking back now, she wasn't an old woman really. You know, she was in her 60s.
That's right.
Which when I was a kid seemed like she was an old woman. And I think people then were old, if you know what I mean. They dressed old, didn't they?
Yeah.
And she always wore a pinny and
She did, yeah.
stuff like that.
Yeah.
So
She had white hair, total white hair as well, didn't she?
yeah, now, you know, they'd be dyeing it and stuff.
Yeah.
But
Well,
it was...
She was only 71 when she passed away. So, you know, 71's not a great age today, is it?
Not today, no. But looking back, it felt like she was an older woman. But she was always in. So, you know, we lived in the village at that point as well, and you could walk around, and whenever you went, she was always in. I never went and thought, oh, I wonder where me nana is.
Yeah.
That's right.
Auntie Belly was the same, really, his sister,
Yeah.
who lived a few doors down
Yeah,
from
that's right.
Nana, and she was always in.
She
And
was.
you could always go, and her and Uncle Ray would be in and sort of welcome you.
Yeah.
And
Was Auntie Belly like me, Nana?
Oh, yes, very much. She was the matriarch in the house as well.
Yeah.
In a nice way.
Mm-hmm.
yeah,
In a nice way.
yeah.
But she was every Belly, my sister, she was the hub who kept all the family together. And because we always went there, we you know, nights on the drink, if you like, or fancy dress or karaoke.
Mm-hmm.
And she was the hub. Everyone went there and all the family came. And then when she passed, that faded away, sadly. But yeah, it's...
I recall a story you told me, if you don't mind sharing, around a time when you were younger and you were due at a party. You'd been invited to a party.
That's right. Anne Robson, they called the girl. I'll never forget. It was a Saturday, and I had an invite, and I said to my mum, I said, I need a new pair of shoes. Because, you know, whatever I had, you couldn't go to a party in. So the general store was open down Seaside Lane at the time, and it had an upstairs where you went for your clothes and everything. And we went in, and probably about 8-year-old, I think, and I wanted a pair of shoes, and all my mum could afford was a pair of wellies. And this is a true story, a pair of wellies. Well, I'd done my ends, but Mum got out one way and I got a pair of wellies. So I put the wellies on to go to the party. And just as I got to the door of the girl whose party it was, it started raining heavy. So I looked the part because I must have thought, oh, he's kitted out for the weather, which was totally untrue. It was all my mum could afford. A pair of
24 at the time as well, weren't you?
But yeah, so we're looking back. I mean, can you imagine a child today, 8-year-old?
Sticking some wellies on.
Yeah.
You just can't imagine it. But it is a different time in that people live way beyond the means now. So Nana at the time, your mother would have bought the shoes she had the money in her hand to buy.
Yeah.
That's right.
Whereas these days,
Sick and all.
you know, and I'm the same. I'm not going to pretend I'm not. But you just put them on.
Yeah.
If you couldn't afford them, you stick them on your credit card and get
Yeah.
the kid whatever
That's
you
right.
wanted. It's what,
Yeah.
you know, it's the modern
Yeah.
way, innit?
Yeah.
Money isn't real anymore.
Well, everything now, even if you haven't got a credit card, you can buy anything over a period of time.
Yeah.
They call them Klarnas and all them. So, you know, even if it was for 30 quid, you could say, well, I'll do that over 3 months. Do you know what I mean?
You know, sorry to interject, listen to Stuart. I recall, because Stu gets on about his children and what they cost and this, that and the other, like we all do. And I remember it must be 32 years ago, when a shop in Sunderland called Joseph's was open. That's right, sports shop. And I had £40 in my pocket, which was a lot of money then. So he wanted a new pair of trainers. So we went to Joseph's, and I kept saying, oh, these are nice. And all he wanted to do, he wasn't looking at the trainers. He was looking at the price tag. So I got that fed up. I went to the counter, to the chap at the counter, and I put me 40 quid on the counter. And I said, listen, I'm sitting here. I said, he can have what he wants, up the value of that 40 quid. And I said, that's it. And he eventually got a pair, but he was looking at the price tags. So he could say to his mates, these cost 70 quid. Yeah. But 40 quid, even so, 40 quid then.
Yeah.
32 years ago.
I don't remember you ever buying me a pair of 40 quid trainers, Dad. I don't know what's going on here. I'll get it off you after it.
You didn't ask.
Excellent. Good story, that. So what about the whole pit thing? Let's move back to the pit thing. So your father was a miner. We've talked about that, local driver and all that type of stuff. Your 3 brothers in the pit and living at home at the time, or?
Oh, I remember, all of us were living at home at the time.
Right.
Our bed arrangements, I used to stay in between my 2 older sisters.
Yeah.
until they sort of got up and moved out.
Yeah.
And then I never had a bed to myself. After
You
that,
lived at home, you never had a bed.
it was luxury when I shared a bed with Uncle Tom. And after that, I think I'd sort of, maybe I did in a couple of years, for a couple of years, have a bed to myself.
Once everyone had moved out.
That's right, yeah.
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 Because you were the youngest
That's
of
right.
them all, weren't you?
Yeah. So, can you imagine a kid today of 14 sleeping between his two sisters? Yeah.
Yeah.
But
And is there a story as well around the lads who were miners and the different shifts and stuff, and they worked on different shifts to be able to get
oh,
the bed?
that's right. Yeah. I mean, one would be on 10 o'clock shift, so he was at work, and the other one would be on first shift. So by the time he got up to go to work, the other one was coming in. So
And we're just jump in the bed, he just got out though.
Yeah, there was always a space. And it was nice and warm. But
Yeah.
like I said earlier, it was the norm, and
Yeah.
no one thought any different. And it's nice to look back and think about, how things panned out.
Yeah. Yeah. And sports growing up, Dad, football was a big thing, and I think, it is Easington.
Excuse me.
It's about football. Sometimes my wife sort of doesn't really get the passion for football.
Yeah.
And I'll watch a game on the television. She's like, "You don't even support these." I'm like, "No, but I love football." And she can't get it. She doesn't get it at all. She doesn't get why I go to the game early. She doesn't get why, if I'm watching something on the telly, she'll text me saying, "Isn't that finished now?" I'm like, "Yeah, but I'm watching the punditry." And she's like, "You're now watching people talk about football." So she doesn't get it. But actually, coming from a place like Easington, it was pretty much everything, wasn't it?
Yeah.
There wasn't anything else.
That's
No
right.
one really did anything else other than play football. And was it the same growing up for you?
Of course it was, because that's all there was. I mean, looking back, golf, tennis, we had tennis courts, but even so, tennis was, I don't know, not many people applied themselves to that. But golf, you couldn't afford to play golf. You didn't think about golf. You might have had you might have put a ball down and hit it with a wooden club or something. But football was the thing for everyone. And as I say, we used to go up to welfare and be there all day, So your parents knew where you were.
Yeah, and a much safer time or a much more, I guess, more comfortable time for you to let your kids out there.
Oh, definitely.
It's a worrying world now, really, isn't it?
Couldn't do it.
No.
Couldn't do it now. No.
No.
And that's sad, isn't it?
Yeah, it really is. Yeah, yeah.
I mean,
So, any stories you want to share about football there, about when you were growing up? Story when a scout came to watch a talent.
Right. Yeah, I was playing for Horton Juniors, actually.
Right.
And we had a good side, some good players there. And my friend, Alfie Carlisle, you probably know Alfie, he said to me, he was a big centre forward, Alfie, but he said to me, "Look, we were playing Hetton Lions, and there was they had a big centre half, and apparently it was supposed to be good hand, and the scouts were going along to watch him this particular game. So Alfie said to me, "Look, son," he said, "just you stop up front." He said, "I'll drop back. You just stop up front, and we'll, try and supply you." Because don't blow me on trumpet, but I was a little bit nippy. And sadly for the centre half, I scored 5.
And that was the end of his scouting.
Two were headers.
Right.
Can you imagine me? 2 headers. Although at the time, I mean, people weren't as big. I mean, the centre half was probably about 5'11". If that was big at the time.
Yeah.
But yeah, I scored 5, and I don't know what happened to him, sadly. But yeah, remarkable. I'll never forget that.
Good stuff.
And sometimes people might think, "Oh, well, I think you're just adding a little bit on there," but no, that's a true story.
Yeah.
5, 2 headers, marvellous.
Excellent. So let's move on a few years then. So you've grown up in Easington. Sort of, when did you meet your first wife, or who become your first wife?
Well, I was always a boy for the girls. No, joke. But I was walking down the street one day, down Seaside Lane with a friend of mine, and your mum, Joan, who's, God rest her soul, she's passed. She was walking down the street, and I looked at her and I said to my mate, I said, "Look, I'm going to marry that girl." And he just laughed it off. And I did. I met her at a party one night, and the rest was history, and we got married, and we had 3 wonderful kids, and that was it. It's, it's strange how things happen. And as I say, I said I'm going to marry her, and I did.
Well, so much so you did it twice.
I did, yes. Yeah. Well, you know, you're right. When we first got divorced, I missed her so much. And I think I had to marry her again to really put an end to, you know, to get her out of me soul, if you like.
Yeah.
Although we remained friends, as you know. And sadly, as I say, really sad, she passed away. But
and then in later years, you met your match with Dawn anyway. So you're sorted now, aren't you?
Yeah, Dawn's the gaffer. And she's lovely. She'll do anything for anybody.
Absolutely.
He will, I. But yeah, so
that was it. But I do recall a story about Ellen and you shouting something after Ellen or something. Jones, oh, you know, our grandmother, Ellen, and you shouted something down the street, didn't you?
I shouted. I said, and this is before I'd said
You'd
that
met
about
her at the party, yeah.
And I shouted over to your grandma. I said, "Oh, Ellen," because we were on obviously first name terms. I said, "Ellen," I said, "have you got any daughters for me?" And your grandma said, "I've got one, but she's far too young for you."
And then not long after you met her at the
party, that's history.
Yeah. Fantastic. So, what happens then? So you get married. Where were you? We still in Easington? We still in Easington Colliery?
We got married and we rented a flat in Easington Street behind what is now the Riald or Carpet place. And we had the upstairs flat. It was 19A and 19. And we had the upstairs flat and one bedroom. And we managed though.
And were there 3 kids at that point, or had you moved somewhere else by the time?
There was you and Nicola and yourself. Stuart came along after we'd moved out of there. But it was a 1-bedroom flat. And my father came up and decorated it all and made a lovely job of it. What we weren't thinking about, well, there's people in 4-bedroom mansions.
Yeah.
It was Easington. You know, it was a colliery house, which obviously didn't apply to me. Or you took what you could. And as I say, we spent 2 or 3 happy years there and got our marriage off the ground and everything. And
so how old were you at this point when you...
Well, I was 24 when I was married. So 24. So probably moved when I was about 28. We got a council house at Rosemary Lane, Easington Village, 21. And couldn't believe it because it was brand new. We were the first tenants in there, brand new. And like I say, couldn't believe the house that we'd moved into from being in Easington Street.
That would have been a 3-bed.
It was 3-bedroom house, yeah. But yeah, looking back, I mean, that was pretty much the norm, a flat.
Yeah.
You know, people done that. You couldn't just go and get on the housing ladder then. I mean, it's difficult now.
It's difficult again now. I mean, there was a period where it was you could, and then it's gone back the other way. But so, and what were you doing at the time? What were you doing for a job at the time?
I always worked in the beer, wines and spirits trade. I worked at Whitbread's Castle Eden, and I left of my own accord, and I should never have done because it was a cracking job. But you know, you're 21-year-old, 22, and you're always looking for something else. And then I worked for a wholesaler in Sunderland. And then I got a job with Bridvic, which was my first elongated job, if you like. I was there probably 20 years, you know, and then they closed the depot and I travelled about and they offered me various locations, but I was a home bird. So I said no, and I eventually took my redundancy. And then I worked up at Hebburn for a company called Trade Team, who were still going. This delivered the pubs and clubs. That was right down on the river at Hebburn, down up near Castleway there. And they were looking for redundancies there, and I was 58, 59. I was working night shift, 1 in 3, and it was, you know, when you're getting a little bit older, the weather starts to, you know, affect you, if you like. And they were looking for redundancies on that because I was a manager in terms of a shift manager, and they were looking to downgrade the number of shift managers. So I put my hand up and I took my redundancy and I'd got a decent deal. And then I took a job at N-Power for the last 5-6 years of my working life till 65, and I retired.
And I do recall you loved that job at Trade Team, didn't you?
I did, yeah.
Like people, and you loved the job, didn't you?
Yeah. Well, you know, you're talking about football, son. The rivalry between the work together. There might have been a driver and a driver's mate, and one was a Newcastle supporter and the other was a Sunderland supporter, and they would work all day and not talk to one another. I can understand it to a point, but not to a point where you won't speak to your work colleague.
I know. It goes way beyond the sort of football, doesn't it? And,
Yeah.
and really shouldn't. That's a question I've never asked you there, and it's just come to me as you're talking about being a sort of football supporter in a club. Obviously, you grew up supporting Sunderland.
Yeah.
At the time, and your brothers did as well. Did you go to games as a kid?
Absolutely.
At Roker Park?
Oh, Roker End.
Yeah.
I remember one time, I was 8-year-old, I'll never forget, it was 1958, and they were playing Arsenal, and I was in the Fulwell end, and I was right at the back, and it was that full. They were putting, and they did the same to me. They were putting kids on their shoulders, and they were rolling them down to the front. So you never touched the floor.
Yeah.
You just went down over people's heads, down to the front. And I was also at the I think it was 1964, when the gates collapsed and we were playing Man United at Roker Park. And we took the afternoon off school without telling the teacher, obviously. And we all went down, and we stood there in the Roker end, just behind the goal, on the iron bars, holding the iron bars. And it must have been for about 3 hours before kick-off. And just before kick-off, the gates on the clock stand side collapsed, and they didn't let them in, but people came in, and the capacity was just too much. You know, they spilled over onto the terraces. It was awful to watch. So that was a Sunderland game I'll never forget, because Monty, good lad Jim, he passed the ball, he took a goal kick and he fluffed it, and it went straight to the edge of the box to a certain guy called Dennis Law. Before Monty blinked, it was in the back of the net.
Yeah.
So yeah, I was always a Sunderland supporter. I went to the Wembley to the cup final. I never missed it. The only game I missed in the cup run was Notts County away. We got a draw and we got them back at home, and the rest history. Trying to think who we played now. Man City, played Arsenal in the semi-final at Sheffield. And that's a funny story, because working for a wholesaler at Sunderland, he knew I was going to the game, so he gave me a car pass for Bassett's factory, which was just off the ground. And he said, you know, whoever's driving, he said, you know, just take that pass. And he said, you can be parked there all day, which I did. And anyway, when we got to Bassett's, they had a barrier. So we stopped at the barrier, and the guy said, right, yeah. He said, come on, we'll get you a parking space. But he said, how many is in the van? And I told him about, I think it might have been about 6 or something. And he came out with more licorice all sorts than you can imagine, because that's what they produced.
Bassett's licorice sauce.
Yeah, absolutely. Honestly, you couldn't get through them. And I never forgot that either. You know what I mean? It's things like that, little things stick in your mind, don't they?
So when you were young, how did you used to get the games?
Bus. We used to get the bus to Park Lane, and then walk over Monkwee Mount Bridge, take a right at the end of the bridge, and we always had a Bessie's Pie. It was called Bessie's Pie Shop, and you'd pass Bessie's Pie Shop, get yourself a pie, get yourself up one at the top road that led down to the ground, and buy a programme. You could afford a programme them days.
Yeah.
But I can't remember what they were, but coppers. And it was even coppers to get into the ground, you know. That's how we could afford to go.
Yeah. Who did you go with?
Well, Uncle Tom, Uncle Jim.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. So they were a bit older to look after you, kind of thing.
I remember quite a few times going with Uncle Jim, and the Royal Naval Club was on the corner just before you turn left to go down to the ground. And him and his friends would go in the Royal Naval Club. But at the time, kids couldn't go in. So I would stand outside the Royal Naval Club. He'd bring me a packet of crisps out, a little pop or something. And he'd probably be in there about 2 hours.
Right.
And I had to wait outside, and then he would go to the game.
Excellent.
It's amazing.
And what do you think of the sort of current state of affairs, you know, at Sunderland? It's obviously unprecedented, really, isn't it? What they're doing right now, they're spending. And
personally, if Sunderland could get success, they would need a bigger stadium.
Yeah.
I really mean that. Fan base, the fan support is second to none if they get success. And it's always been like that.
That's what I was going to ask you. So when you were going to the games when you were younger as a Sunderland supporter, was Easington or that area predominantly Sunderland supporters?
Yes.
Because now I think there's a massive mix, even around Southampton, Horden, Easington. I see lads with Newcastle shirts on, I see lads with Sunderland, but at that time, was it predominantly Sunderland, would you say?
I would have thought so, yeah. Because travel now is easier, isn't it? So to get to St James's Park from Easington Village, then it was quite a hop, like, you know what I mean? But I think it was predominantly Sunderland. And there was always a bus on, by the way, every home game. I'm trying to think of the guy's name. But he would have a bus on, and the bus was always full. But it wasn't like it is now, where, you know, I've just said Brother Jim went for a pint, but if you were on the bus, you know, the bus went to the ground, watched the match, and you came straight back. There was no build-up for a couple of hours going into the, you know, which, by the way, I firmly believe that's the way it should be now, in terms of going and having a few beers, enjoying the bit crack before the game, and then cracking on about the game after the game.
Yeah.
And I think that's the way it should be.
Yeah.
When I was going, it was a case of you went to the ground and you came away. Oh, yeah, Sunderland, yeah.
So just before we sort of move on then, and we move into your family, Easington Colliery right now. I mean, I can't remember the last time I was over, but maybe it was a month ago or something. I drove through for some reason, and it's just, you know, it's really bad what's happened to the place.
Sad, very sad. And I firmly believe when the miners' strike was on and when it was over, I firmly believe that someone in central government said to the local authorities or wherever through the cabinet, just let them rot. Leave them places to rot. And I firmly believe that. And it has.
And that's what's happened for sure, yeah.
There's no funding whatsoever going in. The money that, and I'm sure everyone knows if they're watching this, the money that we've got in the northeast is around our locations is CM. CM does very well, you know, from money from central government or whatever, but it's not being poured into the likes of Easington, Horden, places like that. And I firmly believe someone decided, look, just let them places rot. And of course, the other sad part is the landlords of these houses don't know where Easington is.
Yeah, they've just scooped up a load of cheap property.
Everything's online, isn't it?
Yeah.
So, you know, they're getting the rent paid online. They don't know, they know the address of the person, but they don't know where the property is. And I firmly believe that.
Yeah.
And that's why there's no, in a lot of cases, people don't really worry about looking after the property. And
well, actually, when you drive down, you can clearly see, and I really feel for them, the people who got the redundancies from the pit or whatever and bought the colliery house, and you can see that they stand out in the middle of someone who's trying to upkeep the house still.
Yes.
And there's no way they're ever selling that. You know, that's just negative equity, isn't it? All day long. You've got people owning streets beside you. And, you know, I know it's a horrible thing to say, but they could probably do with just leveling it.
Well, Sonny, you're perfectly right, because it's not just my opinion, it's the opinion of a lot of people. When the Easington Colliery closed, the pit, they should have said to the people that were in the colliery houses, right, we're going to house you in one location, maybe say the A streets or the B streets, whatever, and then the rest we're going to level and start again. But they didn't, and the blame to me is squarely at the government via the local authority. People know what's going on in these areas, but there's nothing done about it.
Yeah. And then even Easington Village, it was a place full of wide open spaces when we were growing up, wasn't it?
That's right.
Yeah.
And now when you drive about, there are no everywhere we used to go and play footy and stuff on bits of grass.
Yeah.
They're not there.
Well, there's
houses, you know.
They're going to start building on the old school side.
Right.
They're going to start building down where the allotments are, down the dog track bank.
Yeah.
On the right. They're going to start building there where the allotments are. Although they said they're not interfering with the allotments, it remains to be seen. And then Hawthorne, they're going to start building on the site. As you pass Hawthorne, the houses on the left, just after there's a big green belt there, and they're going to build a village on there, not just houses, a village. Now, obviously, the people in Hawthorne, the residents, they don't like that,
because it was a quaint little place. Hawthorne, wasn't it? Absolutely. It was really nice.
So as you say about house prices, you know,
there's the thing I've just remembered when you're talking about that. We used to have a dog track, didn't we? Easington had a dog track.
It was fantastic.
It was.
Now a housing estate.
Is it?
Oh, it's a housing estate, yeah. Oh,
massive. Yeah. It's not there now. I took Laura for one of our first dates there.
Did you?
At the end of the dog track. She's romantic.
I said to her, I remember saying to her, we're gonna go out tonight. I'm not gonna tell you where we're going. Just make sure you've got a couple of quid like in your pocket spare, because she'll need it. And she didn't have a clue. And then when we got there and she seen it was the drug track. She always says, wow, What was I thinking with you when you took me on the first date to a dog
She should have
track?
known then, really, shouldn't she? What she was
I
getting
bet she
into,
was
right?
well
I bought a hot dog.
Are you sure you bought it?
No, she might have bought.
I bet she was well impressed when Stuart said, make sure you got a couple of quid in your pocket.
I know, yeah.
Bring your purse. Love.
What I meant by that was just so you could go to the bookies and go, I'll have £2 on trap 2 or whatever.
We're laughing there, you know, but very quickly we're laughing. But Easington Dog Track, Moorfield as it was, on a Thursday and Saturday night, especially a Saturday night, the main club overlooked the track.
I remember
And
now.
everyone had their, you couldn't sit there or there. Everyone, they were all dog owners and they had their own seats. You had to stand back and, you know, watch it over the top of their shoulder.
We used to go quite a bit as a family, didn't we?
We did, yeah.
Yeah. So we were within walking distance in South Crescent.
Great.
The lady used to go, didn't he?
Yeah,
Remember
did,
Lady?
yeah.
I used to love it.
Aye. Well,
Great-
well,
great
tell you
night
what,
out.
mate, I do remember a time when someone had, I think it was via Uncle Aby or someone as well, but someone had collared yous and said, look, here's money. Wait till the last second and go and bang it all on this.
I'd been,
Spread across the bookies, didn't they? And say, all he is go and bang it on last minute.
we had been to Weymouth Hospital to see your mum, and it was raining. We got back, and Aby had said to me earlier on, "Will you do us a favour?" He wanted me to go into the dogs and bat a dog on someone's behalf. And without a word of a lie, I had a £5 in my pocket, and I said, "Yeah, under duress." I wasn't really bothered, but I said, "Yeah, I'll come in and do that." So I'm in the stand because it was raining, and I think you were with us, but memory's not that good. Anyway, this guy came up. Sorry, it was Aby. Aby came up and he said to me, "There's £100, sonny." He said, "And if you can get 5 to 2, sorry, if you can get 2 to 1 for the dog, take 2 to 1." Right? So I'm stood there. I've never moved the money, right? And this guy came up with Aby and said, panicking, and said, "Oh, can you check your money?" I said, "Yeah, you've just given me that." He'd give me 200.
Right.
But he thought he'd only give me 100. So I said, "Yeah, there's 100 back." So I'm stood in front of this boogie, and he was a Scots guy, I never forget. And if I was having a bet with him, it was a couple of quid. Yeah. Now this dog's going to win because the other 5, out. You know, they've planned it.
Yeah.
The other 5 are drunk, if you like.
Yeah.
This dog's going to win, whether it walks round or not, it's going to win. So I stood in with the boogie, and he put 5 to 2 up, right? And I went and I said, "Can I have 250?" And he looked at me. He took the bet, and he looked at me as much as say, you know. Anyway, I didn't even bat the dog myself. Now, what I should have done, but I'm not that type of person, I should have said to the guy, "Yeah, I got 2 to 1.
100%, yeah.
And kept a little bit for myself. I didn't even bat it. Without a word of a lie, we went out and we passed the club on the way out. And he stood on the corner of the club site, and he had a briefcase open like that. And I think it was about 7 people had backed the dog for him. And he was popping all the money in. He closed the briefcase and he said to Aby, "That's a drink I owe you."
Wow.
And I said to Abe, "Abe, never ever ask me to do that again."
Yeah.
So, you know,
Wow.
another
Yeah. They do things like feed the dog before the race or something, don't they, if they don't want to try and like...
You know, certain people would sort of, because it was this close-knit community, certain people would sort of say, "Well, if you put yours out the way, you know, and we'll back mine, and, you know, a few quid might..." I don't know, I couldn't be certain, but...
Well, I still watch the dogs. I still like watching them and having a bet now and again. And the amount of times you see a dog drift from literally odds on. So the other night it was 4 to 11, and by the time it went off, within 10 minutes, it had drifted to something like 13 to 8 against. And I'm like, how can that happen? 4 to 11 to 13 to 8. Sure enough, finish last.
Right.
Do you know what I mean? And yet you're thinking to yourself, like, who's told the bookies there? Someone's primed the bookies that isn't going to win.
Yeah.
4 to 11 to 13 to 8, and it finishes last.
Oh, so they were able to put a good price on so people would back it.
Mm-hmm.
Knowing it wasn't
Some people might just look at the price and go, "That's a certainty."
Yeah.
And then all of a sudden, just before the off, I thought that's not going to win.
Yeah.
And vice versa, when you see a dog getting heavily gambled and it scoots up by half the track, like, why did the bookie have it at 6 to 1 and now it's gone up 7 to 4 favourite?
Yeah.
How?
Yeah.
In that short space of time, what's happened?
It's one of those games where it's not regulated, is it? It is, but not to a great extent.
No, it's still very, very corrupt, isn't it? Let's be honest
Got to be,
about
yeah,
it.
got to
I
be.
mean, I I remember we were at work. I was working on Ferrybridge Power Station. One of the contractors, it was nothing to do with the power station, one of the contractors was a part owner of a horse, and he would tell my boss at the time whether it was trying or not. And I won't tell you the name of the horse, but whether it was trying or not, and my boss would come in and say, it's trying, get some money on. And it's probably the only time we ever made any decent money on horse racing was when someone would come and we'd all put money on and it would win. And then you'd see it racing next time, you know, the same horse, and you'd think, oh, I'll get on it again. And you'd be, no, it's not.
Yeah.
It's not. That's absolutely shocking, isn't it?
Yeah.
Because when it doesn't win and doesn't win and doesn't win, next time it goes out, the price is great, isn't it?
Yeah, of course.
And you can get a few people lumping on.
Yeah.
Oh,
But like you used to always say to me, I'll never forget, Eustace, this too, they're not running them for you, son.